You and I haven't met before, but we're glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Just walked in the door from work.
Just a reminder, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone.
Who just joined us with a telephone ending 9225?
That's me, Jim Lindmore.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, folks, I'll call a meeting to order and we'll get started. We have all the tree commission members here except for Kate, and maybe she'll be joining us later. I'd like to go ahead and introduce Ron Satterfield and hear from his presentation first, since we don't want to impinge too much on a very busy schedule that he likely has. Ron is the interim director of the City of Wilmington Department of Development, Planning, and Transportation, and is going to give us a brief overview on the tree protection changes in the new land development code. So, Ron, it's all yours.
Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button. Does everyone see the screen?
Yes, we can see it just fine. Great.
Many of these virtual meetings I still have trouble sometimes finding the right button or making sure the right screen is saved or sharing and that kind of thing. So I apologize for that. Thanks for bearing with me through some of these unprecedented times and awkward times at moments. I was asked to give an overview of the tree protection requirements that the city has recently adopted as part of our new land development code. For some of you, this will be a similar presentation that was given to the Tree Commission and Alliance for Cape Fear Trees back in May, I believe it was. And I understand there's also some newer members to the commission or the committee, as well as some maybe citizens who may be viewing this, so I may not be aware of what's going on. City of Wilmington in mid-August, August 17th, I believe, adopted a new land development code. Is to regulate all of our zoning, subdivision, and development regulations for the entire city. Those rules go into effect on December 1st. The primary goals in this project was to, sorry, I'm sharing my screen. Not share my screen, but actually video. thought I'd already done that, sorry. The primary goal was there was threefold. One was to implement our comprehensive plan. The other was to comply with our general statutes, 160D, as well as some court cases that have come about over the years, and also to modernize our standards. Just some images from our Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan. That plan was adopted by City Council in 2016. Mr. Lawler, I see you in the audience here. I believe you were on council when that was adopted. So some of these images will look familiar, but these trying to just outline of some of the things that we were trying to achieve as a city. There were thousands of citizens that participated in the meeting. I want to say there was upward of 2 to 3, maybe as many as 4,000 folks that provided feedback in the development of that comprehensive plan. We use the comprehensive plan as the foundation or the pillars, if you will, for the development of our land development code. Just as an example here, you'll see there's a policy 6.3 is about the urban forest in the city and some of the goals we were hoping to achieve through those policies. So again, we use the comprehensive plan as the foundation for our new land development code. And the land development code, I know I mentioned earlier about the development regulations. It doesn't just touch on trees and landscaping. It's looking at parking. It's looking at, you've heard of zoning rules, setbacks, type of uses allowed in certain zoning districts, how properties can be subdivided, how stormwater is managed, conservation resources, floodplain regulations, historic preservation. So it's a full gamut of development and regulations in the city. Trees and tree preservation just being but one component of that. Our broad goal regarding trees, well, we know we're a growing community and we're going to continue to grow, but we want to balance that growth with our preservation of trees. So that was our goal. Wasn't trying to swing one side or the other, but let's attempt to have a balanced approach. So just moving forward with our standards, we'll start with a couple of exemptions. In the current code, that goes away on the last day we'll have the current code is November 30th. If your property is zoned single family and smaller than 2 acres, and you want to remove trees, you may do so, you're exempt, provided that you have a single family home or you're permitted for a single family home. An exception to that would be if you're in a historic district. We are proposing to lower that standard, or we're not proposing, I'm sorry, it was adopted by council to lower that standard to 1 acre. So we went from 2 acres to 1 acre to exempt. We also have included multifamily zoned lots with a single family home on it, or have pulled a permit for a single family home. And the reason we've done that is the image on the right-hand side, you have an image of Eastwood Village and an image of Winchime. One of those properties is zoned multifamily. Another one is zoned residential, single family. You can't tell the difference. They're both single family homes on that. So we're trying to even make it fair game there. We also want to clarify, and so we did clarify that if you have trees in a conservation resources area, that would say areas adjacent to a wetland or a tidal marsh, some of our creeks, those trees, you are not exempt regardless of lot size. We have clarified that in our standards. Defining essential site improvements. Connie, you and Jim were involved. I see you both here, a little interaction here, but involved with a group of stakeholders we pulled together with our development community. This is one of the key questions that we were asked to address. How do we have to accommodate growth, buildings, parking, stormwater, other utilities? How do we do that? Essential site improvements would be those requirements necessary to comply with local rules, state rules, or federal regulations, things like building, where does the building go, your setbacks, how is stormwater handled, how do you handle your utilities? That was probably one of the more difficult conversations on what is the right answer. And I'm not sure we've landed on it perfectly, but I think, it is my belief, the staff's belief, we are better now with the direction that we went. One of those standards, I'm gonna skip a couple of pages, or is the protection of trees along the streets. if any of you were following what was going on with the land development code, you may have heard the phrase "veil of trees." These are trees along a street. The current code would say those trees in what we call a street yard can be removed for essential site improvements. Again, think utilities and driveways and stormwater features and those things. What we had adopted is in yellow that you see on the screen. If you have existing trees within a streetscape landscaping, that's another name for the street yard, those trees can be retained. The exceptions would be, we know you have to have a driveway, but we want to work with you we want to work with the developer where that driveway is placed, not just with trees, but also where does it have the fewer conflicts with other driveways, intersections, and so forth. We also are exempting invasive trees. So we're okay with you removing invasive trees, and I'll go over a few of those examples in a minute. The streetscape landscaping depth would range between 15 feet and 40 feet. So as much as potentially 40 feet of a street could be preserved with trees along the frontage where we have those situations existing. Some of the major changes that we had also were our definitions of regulated and significant trees. I have placed the standards, the changes for the most part in red text here. Regulated trees are those trees with a 4-inch measured diameter breast height for dogwoods, magnolias, flowering trees, etc. An 8-inch hardwood, longleaf pine, and pocosin and black pines, and then a 12-inch other pines not not specified. A significant tree, these are your larger trees. 8-inch dogwood, etc. I won't read all of those. And one of the significant changes, though, you see current code would say a 24-inch hardwood, longleaf pine, pocosin pine, and black pine, and we have changed that to 18 inches. One of the things we heard was be consistent with New Hanover County. New Hanover County lowered theirs from 24 inches to 18 inches. Same thing with the other conifers, 24 inches. A new type of tree category we have is called a specimen tree. Many of you may recall the car wash in the Ogden area where Islands was located. Now there is I forget the name of the car wash. I don't think it's Calibers, but there's a car wash there now. Those trees were going to be removed. New Hanover County worked with, I believe, Alaska Cape Fear Trees, BASE, Home Builders Association. There was an agreement to identify and create a specimen tree category, and I believe New Hanover County landed on 36 inches. And I have a slide on this in a second. We adopted 24 inches. So a specimen tree, there's a live oak, that's 24 inches, a pond or bald cypress, and a longleaf pine of 24 inches. They are specimen trees now, and they have a different category, and there's a different process into having those types of trees removed from the city. And this will be the new provision. So those trees, if you want to remove them, you have to go through the Board of Adjustment and get a variance and request a variance from the Board of Adjustment to remove a 24-inch or larger live oak tree, pond, or bald cypress, or a longleaf pine. So if the developer wants any of those trees that meet that category removed, they have to go through the Board of Adjustment for a variance from that. Again, the last bullet there shows New Hanover County is at 36 inches, the city is at 24 inches. So we have a stricter standard, if you will, than the county. To those invasive trees, this is a new category. The current code basically treats an invasive tree as any other tree. If you remove it and it meets a certain size category, you have to mitigate it. We proposed and it was adopted to not protect invasive trees. They cannot be used to meet any of our required landscaping provisions, and there would be no mitigation if those trees are removed. reason why we did that was, first of all, we don't really want a lot of invasive tree species in our city. But also when it comes down to the prioritization of trees, do you remove a 24-inch live oak or a 12-inch mimosa tree? Prioritization and trying to work with our development community on incentivizing the removal of those invasive trees versus the larger significant trees that we really want, that are more native to our community. Just some types of them will be Bradford pears, mimosa, tree of heaven, princess trees, China berry trees, and Chinese tallow trees. Those are the 6 invasive trees for the North Carolina. That's light on, I'm sorry. It's had a military jet flyover, so I just want to let it clear by. Those 6 trees are listed in the North Carolina Invasive Plant Council, so that's why I use those. That's the source that we can find to show those particular types of trees. When a developer removes trees, significant or regulated trees, they are currently required, and the new code would require mitigation of those trees. So a significant tree, again, remember the 24-inch trees, 8-inch trees, 4-inch trees. Current code would say 36-inch live oak, 24 replacement trees would be needed to for mitigation. And we do that by saying 36 times 2, 72 inches, divide that by 3, and that should come out to 24, if my math is correct. That's the way the code is set up. A regulated tree, same math, but you just say 12. If it was a 12-inch live oak, you say 12 inches divided by 3, and gives you 4 trees, etc. So this is what our current code reads. Our new code, based on feedback we had gotten, also to try to allow variation in size of trees and so forth. Oh, and by the way, when it says replacement trees, that's 2-inch trees being replaced. So 24 2-inch trees. The new code, we've moved to be more interested in the replacement inches. So the math is there in a significant tree, that same example, 36-inch live oak, you remove it, you double the inches, you replace it with 72 inches of trees and measure the DBH. We're not interested in it has to be 2-inch trees, 5-inch trees. We let the developer choose the size of tree that they want to replace, but the main goal being meeting that benchmark of 72 inches in this example. We believe it provides a different variety of tree species and size and so forth, and that will help the site and overall impact on our city. They must use a same or comparable species. There is a minimum growing area and soil volume based on the tree size that I'm not smart enough to figure that out. That was something, if there were specific questions on that, Aaron can provide. And we also narrowed our mitigation chart down to, if it's a native tree, it's 100% mitigation, a non-native tree, 75%, and then invasive. But what does that mean? A native tree, again, is the live oak example, so that's the 100% mitigation. But if that was another type of oak tree that was not native, we would multiply that by, actually it comes out to 150% because it's twice the amount, but so that's where the 75% comes out and so forth. So I'm a little rambling, confusing there, but again, trying to prioritize the protection and mitigation of our native trees versus the non-natives and not protecting the invasive trees. We do provide credits for preserved trees. So as trees are preserved, they can be used to offset the mitigation requirements. We do allow spading both on the site and on public. So if the city has some areas and is willing to take a tree for being spaded from a development site, that can be used by the developer for credit. Other change was our critical root zone. Currently, we have a 1 foot critical root zone for every inch of DBH. So it's 24-inch live oak is the tree at DBH, then there's a 24-foot critical root zone. We have in our adopted code slightly different. It's a 1-to-1 ratio for those trees between 4 and 8 inches. But a larger tree, any tree over 8 inches, it's 1 foot for 0.75 inches. So the math for that same 24-inch DBH tree would be 32-foot critical root zone instead of 24-foot. Hope all this is making sense. Within the critical root zone, our current code allows half the radius of the critical root zone to be encroached upon, and no more than 40% can be disturbed. We, as adopted, will be limiting that to a 20% of the critical root zone area. What we have found is that, and the reason why we wanted to allow some encroachment, and Aaron, please jump in if I say this wrong, is developers would use that, okay, well, I can't provide that 32-foot critical root zone. That's a radius from that tree, so then I'll need to remove that tree. So to incentivize and still allow for that tree to work, we believe that some type of encroachment should be allowed as long as it's done properly, but the roots are protected properly and so forth. Otherwise, again, we just believe the developer would say, oh, I can't save that tree. So we wanted to allow some type of encroachment. And we did prepare a tree preservation scorecard that pretty much summarizes our current code language, which is this left-hand column versus our current code. So you'll see some of this. So our current regulations will be here for the regulated trees versus our proposed. Some of our invasive tree species here, you see here, they're not protected now. They're not treated differently with the current. I'm sorry, this is the new code. Planning requirements and so forth. So proposed code language on this side, current code language here. I did provide that scorecard to Craig this afternoon via email. If anyone on the committee or commission is interested in receiving that, we'll be glad to send it to you. I didn't change the heading here where it says proposed. So when you see proposed, that means what was recently adopted by council. We can change, Craig, if you don't mind changing that before you send it out.
Can do. Hey, Ron, there was a request for a copy of the whole PowerPoint. If you're able to send it to me, I'll distribute. Yeah,
I'd be glad to. Shading requirements in our current code, we require shading only for parking areas. The new code, actually, we changed that to shading requirements for all impervious surface on the site. The numbers are similar, but it's, again, for all, the percentage numbers are similar, but again, it's for the all impervious surface under the new code versus just the parking area for the current code. And I wanted to throw in parking standards real quickly because I feel like this is one of the things that the city has done to help preserve trees. Currently, the city has minimum parking standards. So if you're a business, a retail business, and you want to come in the city, our code will say you have to provide a minimum of 1 parking space for every 400 square foot of gross floor area. Minimum, period. We don't care what your business model says, you do or do not need all those parking spaces. You have to do it to comply with our regulations. We have eliminated minimum parking standards for non-residential uses for the most part. There is an asterisk there. There was a change made at the dais by council and for properties within 650 feet of residential areas. It's a long formula, but where they have to provide a parking study basically to show that they can provide enough parking to protect the residents, the residential lots nearby. City staff had done a parking study back in 2019 prior to the pandemic and showed that the majority of our large scale retail establishments were way overparked. So in essence, we have eliminated the minimum and we have reduced the maximum number of parking spaces allowed. We see that as a benefit for tree protection, essential site improvement. The developer can't say, well, I have to have this many spaces to comply with your rules. We see it as an opportunity to lower amount of impervious surface, to provide more green space, more flexibility in design and building. And we do allow reduction in minimum parking for multifamily uses when they're located within a quarter mile of a transit stop. That pretty much concludes my presentation, Jim. I know I tried to keep it within 15 minutes or so. Probably ran over a little bit, but I don't know if there's any questions that I may be able to answer. If not, we can get answers back to you if I'm not able to answer them.
Ron, I've got a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't know if you recall the last time you presented to our committee, but if you go, you can pull back the slide, or you probably know it off the top of your hand, but the new sheet that gives all the way back towards the beginning, that new standards of a regulated tree and everything. I was strongly encouraged. I know this has all been adopted. There you go. Thank you. I really think you guys need to consider calling out regulated and significant to show live oak. And this sounds strange, but I think you got to dumb it down here, because what's going to happen is the developer's going to come along and they're going to see live oak and they're going to see 24 inches and they're going to go, okay, I can do whatever I want as long as the live oak are 24 inches. If we have this time in this presentation, you guys can explain it to me, you can explain it to a developer or anybody, but that's not always what happens. Is they grab these little presentations, and I think this is what most people are going to see, is what you have in front of us right now. And that says to somebody who's rushing through a developing project, hey, anything over 24 inches, I got to watch out for. All other live oaks, I do whatever. So y'all take that with a grain of salt. I brought it up a couple times now, but I do feel like since live oaks are our specimen tree that we care about the most, it really ought to name it out, e.g. regulated also a live oak.
Sure.
The root zones, awesome. Aaron, I don't know if you remember all the way back to our project here at Wrights Beach Brewery. I tried to grab a picture. This is going to be awful to show you. But this is a great adoption, guys. We've got at Wrights Beach Brewery, I'll show you on my screen here. I don't know if you can see it or not. A laurel oak, and that is the corner of a parking lot there. And Aaron came back at me with this and said, if you don't surrender a parking spot, you're going to lose that tree. And I think this type of back and forth and critical thought is important, because not every developer can come along and go, I'm willing to surrender a parking spot. So I just want to take a moment here to say, great work on that, guys, because that's just the type of just intelligent things to say. The final thing is on the slide that starts mitigating tree creeks there. If you'll pull back to that, Ron, if you don't mind. There you go. Same rules apply on this one. With what I said before, I would just spell it out a little bit further. This one does a good job in pointing out the 12-inch breast diameter height there. But that doesn't sync with that first slide.
No, really. No, baby.
So if you guys could really do everything you can in the language, bonk a developer over the head with, hey guys, live oaks are important. I think it would save a lot of headache for you guys down the road, and ultimately that's why we have these meetings, and that's why I still care about this process. I don't want somebody to come and go, oh, I misread that, I was confused. I think spelling out the live oaks and everything else is going to help save a lot of civil work headache down the road. The final question I posted in the chat there, but it's to Aaron, is, hey Aaron, Ron's done a lot of work on this, the whole city's done a lot of work on this. Do you have the staff to enforce it?
Yeah, we do, Judd, and the discussion about enforcement and staff needed for that was definitely a part of our discussion as we worked through all of this. And I think we came to the conclusion after all this was said and done that we're really not going to need any more staff to enforce the newly adopted code than we did the previous code. Even with all the changes, it will still be reviewed, I believe, at the same level. So I don't think there'll really be any need for staffing additions. Just not strictly because of the new adopted code anyway.
Glad to hear that. And anytime you need somebody in this committee to help you out, Aaron, I know sometimes you don't, our comments aren't always the best, but if there's anything in terms of the protecting live oak side, I know this committee's all behind you and helping you with your
Do you mind if
we appreciate that, Judd. Your comments are needed, so.
I was saying, can I just comment on a couple of things, just because I think you make some good points. And I just want to make sure everyone understands something like you were asking for a clarification, just so that everyone understands what you're saying, make sure I understand what you're saying too.
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm going to go back to that chart that you were pointing out. And so here we just say hardwoods.
Right.
Here, live oaks are hardwoods. And that's,
right.
And that's what we explained back in May when we talked about it.
Right.
I believe your concern is that we're saying live oak here.
Right.
And but not including there, and someone may oversee when as they're trying to design a project.
Sure.
Don't disagree with what you're saying there. So I think it's a valid point, and we will certainly consider. We have what we're calling a glitch board in our office, where anything quirky comes up as we're trying to implement the code. Ever since the adoption of the code, we are basically reviewing projects both with the current code and the new code, just to see how the code works.
Sure.
Obviously, anything in the review process, anything on the review process today, though, we can only require them to comply with the current code. But we are reviewing it so our staff becomes familiar with the code. Things can be unveiled, unintended consequences, and so forth, because while we had good intentions on the wording, we may not have got everything right, and we understand that. So we created this glitch board to unveil some of these concerns, and so we'll add this one there. In our mind, as we explained before, live oak is a hardwood, so we thought we were covered. But if there is that need and desire that we need to change it, we'll be glad. We can certainly consider that. I don't want you to think I'm arguing with you there, because I think I understand your point there.
No, and you gave a great explanation both back. I just, in the interest of live oaks, I would love for that to read hardwood to include live oaks.
Right. No, I got you. And just so everyone's familiar, about a year and a half, I guess it was just before COVID, so maybe in January 2020, actually, we changed our development review process. We keep the new process that requires, and our new code does this, by the way, too, pre-TRC consult before you submit a fully engineered plan. So the goal is, under that pre-TRC pre-TRC consult review, we are identifying all the red flags of your development as you think. So think of it as about a 10 or 20% engineered plan that goes through our review process, no charge, to identify, in this case, since we're talking trees, what are the tree issues of your site? What are your stormwater issues? What are your driveway issues? Is your use even allowed? Is all that is factored into a review before you fully submit engineered plans. And then the next step would be you take our comments and you submit 100% engineered plan with a landscaping plan associated with that. So instead of the back and forth for months and months and months and trying to get someone to design something to our standard, we have found it to be very insightful. We are, in staff's opinion, we are getting better design plans, and we're able to work out conflicts with trees and other things earlier in the process. We're not going to be 100%, but we believe we're identifying those issues earlier in the process and able to work through them. So I just want to make sure that everyone understood that. So we believe that's independent of land development code. That's something we were doing that we did anyway. But we believe that's been very beneficial in the review of our plans.
It sounds great to me. If you've got, stop me, Jim, if we're going over time, but if you don't mind giving Ron 2 more minutes, I'd love to hear kind of how that plays out in real time for what I still call the Galatea, the space between the two ABC stores on the way to Wrightsville Beach. Remember the struggles we had with the Live Oaks there, and ultimately the city was up in arms over what ended up being a slap on the wrist. Do you feel what you've got now, and that gives you a little bit more teeth and makes your life easier ultimately too?
Well, I think in that particular situation, I believe the property owner removed those trees without coming to the city, without a development plan, if I recall the situation correctly. So I'm not sure how we avoid that other than education. The new process will be as you're ready to develop the site. You submit your plans and we go to the TRC console. One thing we have done as a staff, though, is we did prepare some educational materials, brochures, and we did, at least my understanding is we mailed them out to our tree folks here in town, as well as the HOA, so they are familiar when tree permits are required and when they are not. And that's something we want to do, continue to do, is the education component. We believe the education is key to all of this. So, folks just don't know sometimes. The homeowner's not going to know every rule that we have. So we want to continue the education piece.
Awesome. Thanks again, Ron.
Yep, thank you.
So were there any penalties included in this presentation on what happens if you violate any of these rules?
They are in our code, yes, sir. Is it Tom? Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, that's to make sure I see your name correctly. We do have fines in our code that are associated with zoning violations, which would include the removal of trees. I don't recall exactly I'm trying to remember what they are.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know that. And then, as a result of all of the, we've had a few big storms that come through. What help? Will this also help in mitigating some of the just removal of trees as a result of storms, or how do you affect that? Because if a part of a tree does break off, somebody could just say, "Hey, this is a tree that we need to cut down," but yet at the same time, it could be self-pruning, so to speak, and be able to survive and create for example, part of a live oak falls off. What happens to the other part, and whether or not they consider it, a dangerous tree, and they'll just go ahead and cut it down.
That's where we rely on folks like Aaron to help our staff, planning staff, when we do receive a tree permit. We certainly do exempt. We have the exemptions if the tree is dead, damaged by a storm or something. It certainly can be removed, and there will be no mitigation requirements.
Gotcha.
Keep in mind that the first slide that I showed too. So if that piece, if it's a residential piece of property and it's under 1 acre and it has a single family home on it, they can remove a tree without a permit.
Gotcha.
Even if it's a live oak or a specimen tree.
Yeah, gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Ron, this is Connie. It just occurred to me, I forgot to ask, and I think it's probably, I understand what the answer is, but we're talking at your slide there with the Kohl's parking lot. Are they going to be allowed to develop other portions of those parking lots that are vast now? Like, can they put other businesses in there now that the parking codes are going to be changed? Are they going to be allowed to utilize some of those parking spaces for businesses now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We had a presentation from council. We had we used the Walmart over there on Sigmund Road as an example, showing the current. It was like a 2018 Google image of Walmart. We broke down many cars as we could count on the aerial itself, what the minimum standards were, what the occupancy was based on that footage. And then our urban designer at the time put buildings on the image to show how you could have a mixed-use development and say, you know, in front of Walmart. The thing though, Connie, is gonna be Walmart, maybe Kohl's and others, they want to protect their view shed. And so there's probably something written in their leases that would prevent certain improvements in front of them, so passerbys will be able to see their building. I mean, I know this is facing the parking lot in the rear of Kohl's, maybe that's not the best example, but I can see Walmart having something on their lease or on their ground lease or whatever, protecting their view shed.
Right.
The code would allow it. The code would allow it.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. It's Kelly Blair here, City of Wilmington. I was curious, the replacement, you know, if you have a specimen tree that's, I think it said 36 inches, you'd be required to replace it with 2-inch caliper trees that add up to
That's current code.
that. And what's the new code?
New code is, I'm just putting on a slide here, so we'll just use this example at the top. So 36 inches, live oak, you double that inches, so it's 72. So we are looking at 72 replacement inches. We don't care if it's 6 12-inch trees, 12 6-inch trees, or 24 3-inch trees. We let the developer choose that, but they also have to have this minimum growing area and soil volume based on tree size. So that was something the development community had requested, not just through this land development code process, but something they had requested in the past. And we actually embraced it, Kelly, because it takes a 2-inch tree so long to grow in most cases. Not in all cases, but in most cases. And it's so uniform. And, you know, how many forests are really uniform? How many, landscaping areas don't necessarily have to be so uniform. And I think it also provides the development community some flexibility in the types of in the size of the trees that they want to plant on the site and still achieve what we're hoping to get out of it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. First thought that comes into my head would be that, I personally prefer maybe not 2-inch trees, but the smaller trees tend to outgrow after the first several years. As far as becoming established and
sure. Yeah. And
rather
they're
than
still allowed. I want you to understand they're still allowed. So the developer can still choose the 2-inch trees.
I got you.
This is just giving them more options where not where every tree has to be 2 inches.
I got you.
And I say that they could plant larger trees now, but they're going to plant the small ones in most cases. You have some developers who will put in 4, 5, 6-inch trees, but most of them will put in the small ones.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Ron, if I could jump in on that too. Kelly, that a big part of that was a response from the community, not just the development community, but from the community as a whole. For years, they've been asking, why can we not get credits if we want to plant bigger trees? Why can we not get credit for that? So we were trying to follow up on that and allow them the opportunity to get that the credits that they were seeking. If they wanted to do a diverse size in their landscape, they could certainly do that. Because to Ron's point, under current code, they could plant 4-inch plant material, 4-inch caliper trees, but they're only getting credit for 2-inch because that's what's required by code. So this just gives them more options. And you're absolutely right about younger trees catching up with slightly larger trees as they grow. The smaller ones, all of the things being even, they will catch up and sometimes overtake even within the same species. So you have a valid point there. But this was mainly, or a large portion, maybe not mainly, but a large portion of it was a reaction to requests that we have gotten over the years for ability to plant different sizes if they wanted to and actually get credit for it and not it just go by the wayside.
Okay. Thank you.
And Aaron, this is Connie, and they are required to maintain that tree, correct? And so if there's a period of time.
Yes.
Okay.
I forget
Yes,
yes.
Yeah, the maintenance requirement does not change even if, just because they decide to plant bigger trees. The maintenance requirement in the new code is the same as the current one. As far as I know, I don't think we made any changes to that.
I don't recall that we did, Aaron.
Ron, this is Linda Moore. I have a thought for you.
Okay. Hey, Linda.
Hey, I think it's great that you're going to reach out to homeowner associations. It's amazing how much property within the city limits are controlled by various boards of directors. However, people that sit on boards, come and go really fast. So I would suggest that in addition to mailings to the various homeowner associations, you also target the different property management associations. CAMS and Sawyer and a whole bunch of them deal with boards of directors all the time, and they need to know these rules as well.
Sure. And they may have been included, Linda. I don't recall, so maybe we'll look into that for sure. That's a good idea.
I think they may have been, Ron, some discussions that I had with staff. I think management companies were very likely included in those mailings.
Right. There's probably,
Oh, good. Thank
and a
you.
lot of times that may be the mailing address we have anyway for those.
Oh, well, that's true too. Yeah, great.
We're using the tax records to provide them to get that contact info. But we can follow up on that as a good suggestion if we didn't do it. Been great questions, guys. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other burning questions of Ron at this point? Ron, thank you so much for taking the time to give us that presentation.
You're welcome, Jim. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
We look forward to having all this implemented. I've just got one final point that it's sort of a general point. This is something that Aaron and I have discussed in the past. Tree inventories typically are done by surveying technicians. And I've reviewed a number of development plans and then went out and looked at the trees, and in a number of cases, there were young live oaks that should have been, as Judd has pointed out, young live oaks in this 12-inch category that were just simply listed as hardwoods, and also quite often trees that are in very, very poor condition, and for which they should be able to remove and not have to mitigate for. And it seems like the only way that issue comes up is when someone ask Aaron to come out and look and give them an opinion on some of these trees that probably are not in good enough condition to really be retained, and for which they shouldn't have to mitigate. A general issue that sort of keeps coming up.
Yeah, I thought we have in the code, I could be wrong, and Aaron, please correct me if I'm wrong. I thought we said that it had to be done by a qualified professional. Does that sound familiar?
I think that's correct, but I would honestly have to go back and look at it. It's
here.
been a while since we remember talking about that, so I'm not
Same
positive.
here. And that document's only 530 pages or so long, so I can't remember every single word in it. I'm sorry. I finally learned the new one, the current one, the one we currently use, but that was after 20 years here. But I know we talked about that, Jim, and I thought we landed on the qualified professional, but I could be wrong.
Okay, well, I'll take some time to look it up as well. Thanks so much, Ron. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Jim, you're on mute.
Need to add Kelly Blair to that welcome new members. Tom Boland is a member of the Board of Supervisors of the New Hanover County Soil and Water Conservation Department, and also is appointed as an at-large member because he does not live in the city of Wilmington. So Tom, if you would give us a brief introduction to who you are and your background.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, so I've had a lifelong interest in trees. Growing up, I worked as a urban forester through high school, and then once I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Washington and got a degree in forest engineering. And I have worked in the woods of Northwest Washington, along with the woods of Alaska, and doing a variety of forest engineering work. And